Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 8.14 AD carry tier list. So it will be mostly AD carries, but there will be some other things in there too, like Swain, Vlad, Heimerdinger, and some of the other sort of alternative picks in the bottom lane. So this is the bottom lane non-support tier list. So be sure to check out my support tier list as well. I just released that a couple of days ago, and early on last week I also released top 5 tips to help you climb elo faster. So this is kind of like the greatest hits that I often advise people of. It's the best 5, so be sure to check it out. People have really liked that. They said they've gained a lot out of that. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check that out. And if you watch a lot of the content on the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. I know that sometimes it can be very annoying to, have to sign into Google so that you can leave that like or subscribe, but it is really helpful. It helps other people find the content, and it lets you know whenever I release new content. And yeah, it does help a little bit with SEO too. It helps people find it when they do, searches through YouTube and things like that. So if you find yourself watching several videos on the channel and you're consistently enjoying the content, don't forget to leave that like. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you've watched, 3, 4, 5 videos, consider subscribing as well. If you're annoyed by notifications, you can always turn off the notifications if you just unclick the bell. I think it's helpful to have the bell so you see when I release stuff. But if that's what's holding you back, if you just don't want to be flooded with notifications, you can just subscribe just to help out the channel, and then just turn off the notifications if you don't want to get flooded. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. All right, so my tier list, if you're new to this, the methodology that I use is, I think, primarily about Platinum Minus. So this is not a tier list for professional play. It's not a tier list for challengers. It's primarily intended for the bottom 99% of the player base. So things get a little different when you get into highly organized play or people with really high mechanical skill in challenger. Similarly, I look at sort of just how an average person playing this might do. So it's also different when you start thinking about one-tricks, like someone who has, 2,000 games on Vayne or something like that. Of course, Vayne is going to be a much better pick if you're really, really good on her, or Ezreal. Right, so I'm just thinking of someone who's just picked it up, has a reasonable level of experience. Maybe they've played, I don't know what the number is, but they kind of know what they're doing, but they're not a one-trick on the champion. Right, and then I also think about the potential for a champion and how they fit into the meta overall, and I don't just look at the statistics of the champion, although statistics are a part of what I use for the evaluation. But I don't just go down the list and just say, okay, these are the top 10 highest win rate champions, that's my top 10 tier list, boom, done. Right, so I take statistics into consideration, but I also think about the potential for a champion, because some things might be getting overlooked in a particular meta, and some things might be overhyped in a meta. So I try to cut through that and take a bunch of factors into consideration. Okay, and then you can also find timestamps in the description that I forgot to mention. You can find timestamps in the description so you can jump around to your favorite parts if you don't have time to watch the whole thing. You can also access this Google Doc in the description if you want to read along. And then if you're in the Google Doc, I provide a little mini Google Doc for each one of these champions that are in the top 2 tiers. And in this Google Doc, you'll find a link to the Wikia so that you can quickly see the abilities of the champion. You'll find a rating system that I have here, which is really quickly on like a 1 to 5 scale. Just gives you a snapshot view of like what's this champion good at. So with lane pressure, this is how likely is the champion able to exert their will in the lane, right? So do they push? Do they poke? Do they just pressure? Do they do their thing in the lane and force the enemy to play their game in the bot lane, right? And kill threat is how likely is this champion able to get a kill in the lane. Right, so how likely are they to get first blood or, any other kind of blood as the laning phase goes on. And then safety, how safe is the champion, particularly from ganks, but thinking about later on in the game as well. Do they have different things that can help them position better? Do they have different defensive capabilities? Just how safe are they overall? Scaling, how well does the champion perform as the game goes on? And then reliability, how likely is it that someone's going to be able to perform well with this champion in the current meta? So part of that is mechanical. How likely can they hit these skill shots? How many skill shots does the champion have? How difficult are they to execute? But then also, how easy are they to counter? Are there certain picks in the meta that are really, really good against this champion, right? And so some of it is under the control of the player, and some of it is, a product of the meta when we start thinking about reliability. Then I'll also give you recommended runes and recommended items for the champion. So be sure to get into this Google Doc if you're interested, and it just gives you that really quick, just 1-page guide if you want to know more information. And my tier list itself, tier 1 is always top 5 champions no matter what. And then tier 2 is always the next 10 champions, no matter what. And then I have honorable mentions as well. Okay. So the biggest gainers, and this is something that I just started adding on to this tier list, and I did it on the support tier list too, just to kind of give you a quick TLDR at the beginning so you can see who the biggest movers are. Biggest gainers, I think, are Tristana, Heimerdinger, Misfortune, and Jhin. Biggest losers are Rengar, Irelia, Xayah, and Lucian from the last tier list. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. All right. Things shuffled up quite a bit on this tier list, and some of this has been a product of some buffs that were under the radar for a while, a couple of nerfs that were under the radar, and just people figuring out the meta a little bit better, kind of cutting through the dramatically overhyped demise of AD carries. People realize, hey, AD carries really aren't dead. Maybe we're just playing the wrong kind of AD carries, or maybe we're just playing them with the wrong runes and building the wrong items on them. Maybe we just have to rethink that. So people are starting to realize that AD carries are still really good, and they're just optimizing them a little bit better now that the alternate bot, you know, craze has started to wear off, with a few exceptions, right? With like Heimerdinger and Swain, those are legit pretty good picks bot lane. But a lot of this other goofy stuff that people were trying out bot lane, you know, people were trying Ryze, Vlad, Irelia, Yasuo. For the most part, a lot of this stuff has fallen by the wayside and just is not nearly as effective as people thought it was. Okay, so let's talk about Jhin. What's up with Jhin? Why did he move up so high on the tier list? Well, part of this is because they buffed Stormrazor, and this is something that I talked about in my patch notes, but I didn't quite realize just how strong it was. All right, so if we look at sort of how it got buffed over time. Now, this was a hot fix also. This was after 8.3 went through, and so they did this after I released my patch notes and tier list. I believe it was after I released the tier list last time. But they basically made it to where it scales much better. So now it reaches the maximum 200% damage at 30% crit rather than 60% crit. Right? So this is really huge because now you can just get the rapid fire cannon and boom, you get that extra 200% damage on your crit, right? Rather than just getting, you know, whatever the lower number is. So that's a lot more burst damage off the passage, a whole lot. And then they also, back in 8.12, they made some changes to this item. So they gave it 5 extra AD, which is a lot of value. So that's like 150 gold worth of, 175 gold worth of value. It's a lot more. It's 35 times 5. So yeah, 175 gold worth of value. And then they increased the movement speed to 20%. Now they decreased the duration, you know, by a second, but they doubled it. So overall, you're getting less like total distance you can cover with that bonus, but having that extra burst of speed, even though it's for a shorter length of time, is really, really helpful to get away and kite things. So I think overall that is a buff, but the biggest buff I think is the 5 extra AD and the extra percentage damage that you get off of this. And so now we have it to where Stormrazor is probably the most efficient AD item in the game. It's already, even if you don't take into account either one of the uniques, it's already 105% efficient, which is massive. And when you get that extra movement speed, it becomes 130% efficient, and a guaranteed crit, I mean 100% critical strike chance is a lot. I mean, I think crit is 40 gold per percentage point, so getting 100% is like 4,000 gold worth of value. Now, granted, that percentage, you know, is based on all of your attacks, not just one. So it's difficult to quantify, but it's damn good. I'll tell you that. And so this has become the de facto, like, really, really strong item, especially after these buffs. And so I think Essence Reaver, people are figuring out that this isn't quite as strong as we once thought it was. And then Essence Reaver also got nerfed a couple of patches ago. I didn't bring it up here, but they, like, lowered the duration from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. So Essence Reaver got nerfed. This item got buffed. Blade of the Ruined King is not shaking up to be as strong as it once was on a lot of champs. It's still pretty good on certain champs, but it's just not nearly the same kind of, you know, power level on a lot of champs that, you know, we were expecting when the gold value dropped. So this is really nice, especially when you combine it with Rapid Fire Cannon. That's something that a lot of people have figured out as well, is just this plus Rapid Fire is super strong because it gives you that 200% crit damage. And it also gives you that extra range, that 150 range, so that you can get that one attack in. So a lot of the best AD carries right now are going to be able to leverage that combination really well. Stormrazor plus Rapid Fire Cannon, you're going to see that a lot. And it's just all about getting that first hit that just does massive damage. And then after that, you know, you can do your extra little bit of damage. Hey, thanks so much. Hey, Lisa, I appreciate it.
Hey, this is for the coaching session linked to IGN Hayleson or Hayden Lafreniere at. Thank you for your time, and I can't wait to see what you can coach me equals.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, so that's the combination you're going to see a lot, and it's just which champion can do that the best. So who can use this rapid fire plus Stormrazor, who benefits very heavily from having that guaranteed crit. And I mean, obviously the first champion is going to come to mind is Jhin, right? Because whenever he crits, he gets that extra bonus movement speed, and that combines with the extra bonus movement speed you get off of this. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I think they changed this a couple of patches ago, is the fourth shot doesn't stack. It doesn't get anything extra from Stormrazor. I'm pretty sure, because it's a guaranteed crit from Jhin, which overrides the Stormrazor proc. So I think the Stormrazor will trigger, I think you'll get. Actually, I don't think you get the movement speed out of it. It says it here. Critical strike does not take priority over a standard critical strike. It will not apply the critical modifier or whatever, and it talks about this and Shaco's. It doesn't mention Jhin, but I think that Jin's fourth shot will not trigger that stuff either. So it's just kind of a waste on the fourth shot. But you can, I mean, if you're timing it like for perfect optimization, you hit him with the third shot. It's a guaranteed crit off of Stormrazor. You get the movement speed, both off of Stormrazor and then off of Jin's passive from getting a crit, and then that allows you to run him down and get that fourth shot, which is also a guaranteed crit. So with Jhin, you can go crit, run him down, crit again, and that's probably going to just about two-shot people a lot of the time. So that's kind of the combo that you want to do, is when you get that third shot in, then you crit it, and then you go for the kill. You go for that third hit, and then you go for the fourth mega hit. And that's kind of the 1-2 punch. So Jhin is just super good with that itemization. Also, people have sort of uncovered a rune that's pretty good on him that I thought was kind of troll, but doing the math on it, it's actually pretty good. Is this Hail of Blades rune. And I was wondering, well, why is this so good on Jhin? And I looked at, like, I researched and looked at, like, the Jhin main Reddit. And the reason that this is so good is that it's on attack and not on hit. So that means that the first attack benefits from the extra attack speed, and that is massive. This is why lethal tempo is not as great on Jhin, because Jhin as a champion primarily wants to hit like just once or twice and the fight's over. Like, he wants those big hits, those big crits. He doesn't want to have to sit there and, you know, fight for an extra second and a half to trigger lethal tempo. He wants that damage right off the bat. And so he gets this extra, you know, whatever, even if it's just 80% attack speed. If we pull that up, I forgot what the precise number is. Where is calculator? I thought I just had it up a bit ago, but maybe not. Okay, calculator. And if we look at Jhin, let me pull him up here. I forgot, I think it's like a 30% conversion rate or something. Maybe it's not that high. 25% conversion rate. So that's, oh, that's easy math. So that's 1/4. So if you get 80% attack speed really early in the laning phase, right, it goes from 75 to 125%. So even at 80%, that's 20 extra AD. AD is worth 35 gold apiece. That's 700 gold worth of value. Like level 3 or something on a rune. That's ridiculous. And that applies for 3 shots. So you can get up to 3 hits with that extra AD on it. And that's going to hit like a truck, especially because that can crit, right? Because that gives you the extra AD. Remember, because he doesn't benefit from attack speed, it translates over to AD. And attack speed can't crit because it's just attack speed. But when it converts to AD, it can crit. So it scales with his 4th shot and with Stormrazor off of this. That's what makes it so strong, is you get the extra AD and that also can crit. So he does massive damage early on with Stormrazor, with Rapid Fire Cannon when he eventually gets that, and then also with this rune Hail of Blades. And Hail of Blades only has a 4-second cooldown, so it's great for just going in, you know, you want to hit him with that 4th shot, boom, hit him with the 4th shot, it does a ton of damage. So it's great for just very light trades, you just hit him once or twice and back up. You know, 4th shot, grenade, back up, boom, you know, attack the creeps a couple of times, reset, do it again, they're probably dead. So that's why, is whenever you do that very first attack, the first attack that you do benefits from it. So that's something that I thought was really troll when I first saw it. I was like, oh, it's just an all-caps YouTube video, or this kid's trolling, or whatever, and it just never really got explained well to me. That's what's going on until I actually researched and looked up on that Reddit page. And so that rune actually got buffed as well. And I'll put it here fairly recently. Yeah, so on patch 8.13, the cooldown went from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, which is nice. That means you can do it more often in lane. And then you have extra time between attacks. You have 2 seconds instead of 1.5. And then on 8.12, you know, they also buffed it by a pretty good chunk here as well. So this is relatively new, why this thing is becoming pretty strong on some AD carries. But I think Jhin is the biggest beneficiary of that because it translates to AD, which translates into bigger crits. Okay, so that all is why Jhin has come up so fast and so hard, is because Stormrazor is like the best item to rush now on most AD carries. He's one of the best users, if not the best user, of Stormblade. And Halo Blades is ridiculous on him because it converts the attack speed into AD, which is extremely powerful early on in the game. It synergizes very well with the crit from Stormrazor and from his 4th shot. So that's why. It's just like a perfect convergence of he has an awesome rune that works extremely well with his kit and works very well with the best AD carry item right now. So that's why he's super, super strong. And so you want to go Hail of Blades, Taste of Blood. This gives you a little bit of extra sustain in lane. It also means you don't have to get as much lifesteal early on, which is good. I mean, it's okay. It's a decent rune. I think Ghost Poro is also another thing that is making the domination tree a little bit better. The reason for that is it gives you free vision early on, and if you can get it on the enemy side of the river, you'll get an extra 5 AD or so, you know, during the laning phase. It goes from like 3 to 21 AD, something like that. Let me say. They just changed it this patch. 3 to 12. Okay, so not as much as I thought, but still, you're going to get, you know, like during the laning phase, you'll get 3 to 5 extra AD, which doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a ton, but even at level 1, that's still, you know, 105 gold value, level 1, and then you get a little bit more as it goes on. And you basically get permanent vision. I mean, it's great. So if you can sneak it into their jungle, that gives you some really good potential there. Now, another option that some people go is Eyeball Collection. Now, Eyeball Collection is going to give you more damage later on in the game, but you have to stack it up. You have to get 20 eyeballs on it. So you have to get like, you know, 20 eyeballs, which is like a combination of kills, assists, and ward kills, all that stuff. You're not going to have this stacked up to like 25 minutes in the game. So yeah, it's good later on. It gives you, how much AD does it give you? 12 attack damage. Well, it's not too much better than Poro, actually. Wow, it's not even better than Poro at all. I was thinking it gave the extra 28. Oh, you get the extra 6 here. Okay, so you get 18 once you fully stack it. So you can get up to 18 if you have it fully stacked at 25 minutes versus the 12 from Ghost Poro plus Vision off of Ghost Poro. And Ghost Poro does something very early on as well. So to get that extra 3 attack damage, you would have to have 5 eyeballs collected on this thing, which is probably not even going to happen most of the time until, I don't know, 12 to 15 minutes, whereas Ghost Poro gives you that at level 1. So I think that Ghost Poro is something that some pros are finding out about. I found this in my research to be something that's pretty strong. But yeah, if you can just sneak this and put this over in their bush, it depends on which side you want, on where you'd want to put it, but just get it somewhere in their jungle early on. This could be really good. Or even if you're not getting the AD value out of it, just putting it in your own river bush or something early on is nice. Like, it helps you, you know, keep track of if the jungler's coming for you. So I think it's very versatile. It's very helpful. So I think that this has made the domination tree a bit more appealing than it once was, because this is a really good sort of damage option if you can manage to get it in their bush, and really good vision option if you can't. And then it's kind of up to you what you want to get after this. Some people go Ultimate Hunter, some people go Ravenous Hunter. I think Ravenous is nice. It gives you extra sustain in lane because your grenade, you know, does that extra damage. So it gives you a little bit more sustain in lane. So I think that Ravenous is probably where I would be. But if you want more ults, then, you know, you can go Ultimate Hunter. That's fine too. And then I think just the standard Celerity Gathering Storm. You could also do Mana Flow Ban. Some people get that so that you get a bit more mana early on to cast more grenades and push a little bit faster instead of Celerity. Although, remember, you go pretty quickly whenever you crit somebody. You gain a lot of extra movement speed, so that, you know, translates into probably 15 to 20 extra AD after you crit somebody and you're running around really fast. So, you know, it's something to consider. And then as far as your boots go, you want to go rapid fire, or swiftness rather. Just having that extra movement speed is a really big deal on Jhin. That's really your only safety, is to be able to, you know, get away from people or chase them down. So I think that swiftness is what everybody gets on him. And then Stormrazor, rapid fire cannon, infinity edge. And that makes him a very good early game bully, probably the best early game bully. And you actually scale pretty well with this into the late game, because your crits just hit like a freaking truck. Like, anything that's squishy, you're probably going to two-shot it later on, especially if you do that 1-2 punch I was talking about. When you get rapid fire and you've got your third shot lined up, and you hit them with the Stormrazor crit, and then you hit them with your real crit, your fourth shot crit after that, it's probably a 1-2 punch, lights out. So, yeah, it takes a little, like, practice. You know, Jin's a bit harder to play than a lot of other AD carries. That's why I have him at only a 2 reliability. But if you just get used to that rhythm, just hit him with the 3, hit him with the 4, you will obliterate people if you have this item build. So I think that he's a very, very strong champion right now. I expect to see him a bit more in pro play. You've seen him a little bit now, but it's not patch 8.14 yet, so I think the hot fixes are in, where Jhin gets that extra, or Stormrazor got that buff. But, like, Ghost Poro's not in yet. But, I mean, that's kind of a solo queue thing, you know. Enemies are going to be looking out for that if people try that in pro play, probably. But, anyways, I think he's a great solo queue beast right now. Okay, let's go ahead and move on, though. All right, so number 2, Miss Fortune. Now, I have critiqued Miss Fortune heavily on my stream for quite a while, and I think a lot of people just don't play her that well. But the meta has also shifted a bit also to where, just for terrible verbiage there, has shifted so that people are playing less assassins. There are still some, but now there's only like 1 or 2 on a team. Whereas, you know, the last couple of patches, it was like 3 every game. You know, like the top, mid, and jungle were all playing assassins a lot of the time. But I think we're starting to see some more tank tops emerge. We're starting to see some more like tanky junglers emerge. And mid lane is still primarily assassins a lot of the time, but some of them are getting nerfed now. Like we just saw Talon got nerfed. So I think that we're starting to move back towards more teamfight oriented comps. You're seeing a lot more CC from people, and that's what Miss Fortune wants. She likes that a lot. And so she still has a really strong early game, but now that we're starting to see a resurgence in teamfight play, then she's getting stronger with that too. And people have kind of figured out that Dark Harvest is actually pretty good on her. Now, I was a critic of this as well. I saw that, and I was like, that's troll as hell. Like, that's really stupid. But I did some research on it, and I think that it's actually probably the best rune for her if you actually do the math on the Dark Harvest rune. I had historically been a big fan of Comet, but Celerity has been nerfed a lot. She's already pretty fast with her passive, her strut, so you don't really need to be super fast with her to begin with. And Celerity got nerfed a lot. Mana Flow Ban is still pretty good. But Comet, you can trigger it once every 20 seconds effectively. Let's look at Comet here really quick. So this is historically like what a lot of people have used on Miss Fortune. Now, Comet does, 30 to 100 damage total. It does have a 35% AD ratio. People can dodge this, though. If they're moving whenever you hit them with something, then, it's not going to work. It's not going to hit them. So it's important to keep that in mind. And then damaging enemy champions with an ability reduces the cooldown. Okay. You're not going to be hitting them with that many abilities. Like, it's probably going to be 20 seconds most of the time. Although, sometimes, yeah, maybe you can get it down a little bit lower, but in the laning phase, 15 to 20 seconds, whatever. It's still pretty good. You can still get, Mana Flow Band is pretty good. Celerity got a lot worse, but it's alright, and Gathering Storm is okay as well. But with Dark Harvest, if we go over and look at this, It has a 25% bonus AD, so not as high as the other one. But your total soul essences that gets added onto the hit, right? And so you get your soul essence from mostly cannons in the lane. Oh, I didn't even realize that. I just read this. I thought it was just whenever you kill the enemy stuff. It's also for allied. Enemy and allied champions, large monsters, large minions that die nearby drop. Wow, okay, yeah, that's actually a lot better than I thought even. I thought it was only if you killed enemy champions or if you killed enemy cannons. Wow, that's a lot better, because I was thinking, like, you can trigger this once every 30 seconds. Effectively, because you're going to have one cannon minion coming down the lane and you'll trigger it, so it stores up, it scales over time, and then it has this bonus ratio, so it's just a little bit slower than Comet. But yeah, if you play your cards right, you can actually trigger this twice every 30 seconds. So if you kill your cannon first, right, if you're pushing, you kill your cannon, and then you can use the Dark Harvest, get it to trigger on them, and then they kill their cannon, then you pick it up and you can trigger it again. Right? 10 seconds till picked up by moving closer. If you kill the target, you automatically pick it up. Okay, so now you basically stack 8 essence per minute effectively if you're near both cannons. So that's pretty good. That means after, like, by the 12th minute or so, 10 minutes in, after minions arrive to the lane at 2 minutes, you know, you're going to be sitting at 80 essence. So that means by like 20 minutes, or probably faster than that, you're going to be at this 150. And so late game, if you're, and then that lasts for a really long time. And this also affects towers, because I've seen it just chunk towers hard late game. So that's actually really good. That means in like a team fight, you know, if 6 people die, you're going to get 6 of these. You're going to get, you know, 36 essence off of that. Wow. I never read that line, enemy and allied. Okay, so I'm learning as as I'm analyzing this. So this is actually way better than I thought it was. Okay, so that's actually really, really good. Because then as the game goes on, you know, this is dealing 150 plus 80 is going to be 230 base, you know, by 20 minutes. 230 base plus a 25% ratio, whereas Comet was way, way less than that. I don't remember what the number was, but it was far less than that, I think. Right. Yeah, stops at 100. Yeah, so Dark Harvest is really, really good on that. And the reason why, like, Misfortune specifically, if you're wondering, well, why don't other champions run Dark Harvest if it's that good? The reason is your Q can trigger it. So you can bounce it off of minions, and then even late game when you're trying to just poke, you're, like, hanging out at the tower, like you're sieging the enemy or something like that. You have such a large bounce range off of your Q that you can effectively harass people from like 1,000 units away with that Q, and it's going to do massive damage off of the Dark Harvest. Also, when you start thinking about these runes like Dark Harvest, they're physical damage, and so any sort of penetration is going to help that out. So if you go lethality, which is what you should be getting on Misfortune most of the time, that's going to make Dark Harvest do even more than it normally would, because you're going to have a lot of lethality. Because Misfortune doesn't waste a lot of stats on attack speed, all of those stats are going to benefit Dark Harvest. So if you have like a Duskblade, for example, the flat AD, and then also the spell, the lethality, the penetration, all benefit Dark Harvest. There's no wasted stats on that item, right? The same thing is true of Ghostblade. Everything benefits it because Misfortune never builds attack speed, really. She's going to get Duskblade, Ghostblade, Black Cleaver. And so, you know, versus someone like, you know, Jinx, she's going to get a lot of attack speed on her items, and that's not going to benefit Dark Harvest at all. And so that's why it's specifically kind of a Misfortune thing to have Dark Harvest. Now, like, Jhin is someone else who might benefit from this, but he benefits so heavily from crit that you really want crit because Dark Harvest can't crit. So in theory, you could go, like, Lethality, Jhin, and go Dark Harvest, but I don't think that's as good as what I just laid out with Hail of Blades. So this is kind of very specifically a Misfortune thing, and that she's a caster that can do this. So yeah, you can chunk people out really hard with that rune, and then you go Taste of Blood as well. Ghost Poro, Ultimate Hunter is a nice addition that's really sweet, because, you know, your ultimate is such high impact that getting that up faster and faster is going to be really, really nice. And with your items, you just want to go Duskblade, Ghostblade, Black Cleaver. And so you just can smack people for a ton of damage, you know, if you... I don't think Dark Harvest crits, though, right? Let's see. Your next basic attack is enemy champion or structure within this to deal bonus damage. I don't think that it crits. Damage can be applied only by basic attacks or abilities that apply on-hit effects. Okay, so it counts as an on-hit. I'm about 99% sure that it can't crit, so I don't think it benefits from if you kill the minion and then it bounces and gets that crit. I don't think that Dark Harvest benefits from that. Seems like that'd be pretty overpowered. In the same way that, like, Ezreal's Q can't crit. Okay. But anyways, that still does a lot, right? So that's part of what makes Miss Fortune really strong right now, is the meta's shifting a little bit so that you aren't seeing as many assassins. You're seeing some more team fighting. She's very good with Dark Harvest. That people are kind of just sort of figuring out that tech. And then because of the way that it interacts with your Q bounce, right? And so you can, even later in the game, you can safely trigger multiple Dark Harvests while you're sieging and, you know, with poke via your Q. So that's very helpful. And then, yeah, just kind of rediscovering this lethality build, the Duskblade, Ghostblade, Black Cleaver. I wouldn't do any crit builds or anything like that. I see a lot of people getting the wrong items on Miss Fortune. You know, you don't need to try to go like Rapid Fire, Infinity, or anything like that. Just straight up Duskblade, Ghostblade. She's really strong early game if you land those bounces, and she has a really good mid game with her ultimate. That Dark Harvest gives her a pretty good like late game burst. So once again, the thought process, kind of like Jhin, is that if an assassin comes up to you, you might be able to just two-shot him later on. If you just single auto attack him, trigger that Dark Harvest, Duskblade, and then Q him for that extra damage. I mean, you could probably do like 1,200 damage or something, just auto Q. Later on. So, is she about to be on the loose? I see. But yeah, so I think that she can be pretty good. I still think she's susceptible to assassins. She doesn't have many escapes, but she's very, very overbearing early on, and she's extremely good if you have a teamfight comp. Right? If you have a Kennen on your team, or an Amumu, or just anything that can lock people up in CCM, she's going to be pretty strong. Alright, so those two I just wanted to explain a lot because I've kind of reversed my position on them because the meta has shifted, the itemization and runes that are optimal have shifted. Some other champions have also fallen down quite a lot, right? And so champions like Xayah, they were really, really overbearing because Ginsu's was the best item by far you could be doing, and they nerfed the crap out of Ginsu's. So, like, it's not like these were secretly, like, the best the entire time. They changed, like, right? So Stormrazor demonstrably got a lot better early on. Xayah got a lot worse. I mean, Xayah's win rate fell like 6% or something when they changed that on her. Lucian has fallen very far out of favor as well. I mean, he still is pretty good, but the nerf to his R was a much bigger deal than I thought. So, you know, we'll mention them when we get down to them, but I just want to, like, clarify that it wasn't like these were mega strong the whole time. They were probably a little bit better than I was giving them credit for because I wasn't doing enough research, and people were just playing them really poorly in my games, but that doesn't mean the champion was bad, just the players are maybe bad with it. But yeah, I think there definitely has been a lot of shift as far as like less assassins. The AD carries that were good with Lucian and Xayah have fallen down a lot. And just the itemization changes and the rune changes as well. Okay, then we have Draven. Draven was here. He's kind of been at the top the whole time. I mean, I think everybody kind of realizes that Draven is an excellent early game bully. A lot of people are going towards Crit Draven, or not Crit Draven, but Bloodthirster Draven now. I think Bloodthirster Stormrazor is what most people are building on him. I mean, everybody knows Draven. He's very, very strong. He has some of those powerful one-hits in the game, really good at harassing. You notice all three of these champs are like that. They have really strong initial hits, right? Whether that's like Miss Fortune's Q off of minions or Jin's fourth shot. These guys hit like a truck, and they have a ton of front-loaded damage. Like, they burst you really fast. And that's really what this meta is about if you're an AD carry. I think a lot of times it's not the sustained damage, but rather the burst damage that you can do. From range, usually with Stormrazor Rapid Fire Cannon, but Misfortune was kind of a different story that we talked about. But Draven is going to follow that same formula. He just gets lifesteal early. If you didn't know this, because his Q actually applies lifesteal, the extra damage that you deal with your Q also applies lifesteal, and he deals a lot of early game damage with that Q. If you've never looked at these numbers, I've talked about Draven in the past, and these kind of tier lists, but like his Q, even early on, right, he gets 35 flat damage at level 1 on his Q. That's, I mean, that's for almost all intents and purposes, that's the same as AD. That's a lot early on. And then he gets 65% of the bonus AD that you have. So if, just let's say from like your runes and you put your Ghost Poro down and all this other stuff, let's just say that you have like, I don't know, plus 20 AD early on. You may not have that much. We could just say even 10. Even if you only have 10 bonus AD from all your other stuff, that's still an extra 6.5 damage. So let's just make it a round number here. Let's say 42 extra AD is what you get effectively at level 1 with Draven. That's almost 1,500 gold worth of value he gets level 1 just by pressing Q over other AD carries. He starts with a free BF sword, pretty much. He starts with a free BF sword in his inventory just because he's playing Draven and presses Q. So that's why. He's just like extremely powerful early on. And that benefits from lifesteal as well, even though it's technically an on basic attack. It's really nice. So he does a ton of damage, and that's why you'll see people get Bloodthirster, because he's such a bully. He wants to trade early because no one's going to match him in trading most of the time. If he walks up and gets those first hits, you know, and the autos in, they're donezo. And that's why a lot of times he'll end up going Conquer as well, because you get that first hit, it triggers Conquer. If they don't run away immediately, they're dead, basically, because you're doing so much extra damage, and then it gives you that extra AD, and AD scales so well on him also. Now, I think people are still going to go Conquer. They did nerf Conquer a little bit, especially early on this patch, but I don't think it was enough to really dissuade Draven from getting it. I mean, he's going to lose like 4 AD early on, but he still is going to do, like, his Q is going to do a decent chunk of true damage, and remember that AD scales super hard on him as well, because it not only gives your normal attack, you know, extra damage, but his Q also scales with AD, so it's almost like you're getting a critical strike every time you buy AD. So, for example, if you get just 100 AD, typically, you know, on a normal person, a normal character, that you would do 100 extra attack damage, right? But on Draven, you're doing 165 extra damage with your Qs, because this has a modifier on it. It's 65% of your total AD. So by the time level 9 rolls around, you're basically getting double benefit from AD when you have this maxed out. You're doing effectively 200% damage, right? So you get 100 AD, you hit somebody, it not only you do 100 damage, but you actually do that extra 100% damage, and if it crits, you do even more damage. So he scales super, super hard with AD. So that's why you'll see him get, like, Bloodthirster and then Stormrazor, because he just wants maximum AD, and then also has a guaranteed crit on it. So he's going to almost literally be one-shotting people if he gets those 2 items. Like, it's just, I mean, I'm sure y'all have felt it if you've ever played against Draven. It's just an insane amount of damage, and that's why, is because that Q is so ridiculous early on, and it scales so hard. People think Draven doesn't, they think that he doesn't scale. He does. He scales really hard. I mean, it's, you can't really draw up a picture where someone's going to scale much more than getting double benefit off of AD, you know, the whole time. His problem is that he's just really vulnerable. He has virtually no defenses other than throwing his stand aside at somebody. And this only works if you catch all your axes. So if you're not a good Draven player and you drop axes, and you don't land your stand asides, then he's not going to be that great. But, you know, he's really good. He also snowballs. Obviously, people know that he gets all this extra gold and stuff like that off of kills, but he's strong even if he doesn't get the kills, just because he has all this extra snowballing off his Q. So I still think that Draven is really good. He doesn't quite have the same level of utility as Jhin or Misfortune. Doesn't have any wave clear. Both of them have pretty good wave clear. And like, yeah, he just doesn't do as much in like a team fight as either one of those do, but he's still very strong. I mean, he could be number one. If you're a Draven one-trick, like there's a reason he's probably the most successful one-trick in League of Legends as far as AD carries go, is Draven. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with Tyler 1, you know, hyping it up. They're being a huge spokesperson for this champion, but there's a reason that a lot of times, you know, Draven is my favorite AD carry to lane with, and that usually they have really high win percentages, especially at lower elos. It's because he's very good, even though he's really hard to play. Okay, so yeah, Draven's a monster. He's really good. So someone who's risen up quite a bit is Heimerdinger to transition over. This guy is just a terror in the bot lane. I didn't think he was going to be that great. I thought it was just like an EU, like that G2 type of thing, you know, but I've seen some Heimerdingers in solo queue quite a bit, and this champion is just a nightmare to play against in the bot lane. And part of the reason why he's so strong right now is because there isn't a very good AD carry that just like auto pushes the lane early on. I mean, Sivir can do it, but she runs out of mana so fast. But you don't have, like, Caitlyn's out of the meta is the big thing, because Caitlyn historically is the person who pushes the wave super fast with her E, has, you know, great zone of control with her traps, and is just a real pest. She just auto-attacks you every time you try to do anything. She has extreme range. Heimerdinger is like that. I mean, he drops his turrets, he's going to auto-push, and then he's just going to harass you with rockets, you know, just over and over and over again until you want to pull your hair out. You can't dive him, because if you try to come at him, you know, those turrets are going to light you up, especially if he's a pretty good Heimerdinger and lands the grenades on you. Now, Heimer is very hard to play. I'll say that. I've played him a few times. He's a lot of fun, but he is really hard to get his stuff right, to land those rockets, you know, to make sure that you get the turrets down and you're landing your grenade stuns. There's a lot of, like, nuance from, like, really good Heimerdinger players and just, like, okay Heimerdinger players like me. And just deciding which mode you want to use on your ult, whether you want to do like the big rocket blast or drop your big turret, is kind of a tough call. But if you look at him, like, his numbers are pretty high. What's historically been a problem for Heimerdinger is mana, at least on like some of his abilities, especially like his grenade costs a lot of mana. But now you can rush Ludens, and Ludens is a great mana item on him. Right, it gives him 20% CDR and gives him all the mana he could ever want. So this is a really, really powerful item on him. And it gives you, you know, that extra little bit of burst damage off of the Ludens passive as well. So Ludens, you know, benefits Heimer more than almost anybody else in the game. It's so strong on him. And then once you get your Lost Chapter, you pretty much have infinite mana. And now that Teleport is also in vogue bot lane, because they nerfed heal a few patches ago. Like, all this stuff has come into play to make Heimer really strong. He has a very good item with Ludens. He's very good with teleport in the bot lane. They nerfed a lot of the other AD carries, especially Caitlyn, who, if Caitlyn was really strong, if you tried to do a Heimerdinger bottom in, like, Caitlyn's heyday in the Ardent Sensor meta, like, you would get laughed out of bot lane if you dropped Heimer in there, you know, like June of 2017. There's no way he would make it. But now he can, because there's no Caitlyn. So, I mean, we'll see. Next patch, they are thinking about changing some of the crit items around to make him a lot stronger. I think that's really dicey, because I feel like AD carries are kind of in a, like, I feel like bot lane's very diverse right now. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that can work. You're starting to see some champions like Tristana come back. Some of these crit champions. Jinx is kind of coming back a little bit. You know, and then you have pretty good, you've got like Draven, Jhin, Misfortune. A lot of these are very different. Then you can also have Heimerdinger or Swain. I think it's very diverse and fun and like pretty cool bot lane. So I wouldn't tinker with it too much, honestly. I mean, maybe like a little bit of help to the crit items, but I'd be careful. Anyways, Dinger, very good. Has really good ratios on this too. Like, people forget, like, this turret really does like almost nothing base, and this is why people max rockets instead of max turret. But it has a 30% AP ratio, which is crazy. So if you get to like 200 AP, you know, this is 60 extra damage per shot, and these things shoot pretty fast. You can have 3 of them down. So yeah, and they also changed Heimer at some point. When are they gonna? Can I see history? Nah, it's kind of glitching out. They changed him at some point to, like, just make him a lot better than he has been in the past. I think that was within the last year or something. It wasn't like a full-on rework, but they just kind of, like, I think they changed the way that his rockets and his turrets worked. But anyways, he's really good. Great zone control, great pushing, very annoying to deal with, very difficult to dive. So he's kind of your premier sort of mage Caitlyn in the bot lane, if you want to think of it that way. Very strong off of one item, very strong zone control. If you can actually get a hold of him, he's pretty easy to kill. He's also very good at taking, like, turrets and Baron. So he has very good objective control. So yeah, Heimer's a beast. I mean, if you're a really solid Heimer, he could be #1. I expect this champion to get nerfed in, like, probably a couple of, like, within a couple of patches, probably. And that's sad, because, you know, he just hasn't really ever had his time in the sun. But he's so annoying. I think people just hate him going against him. He's really fun to watch, and he's really fun to play. It's just, like, he's kind of got the Zoe effect, where he's fun, kind of fun to watch, kind of fun to play. But he is just absolutely no fun if you were against this champion in lane. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. My prediction is he probably gets nerfed at some point. I mean, if they make Caitlyn, like, if they nerf crit, or they buff crit enough, or buff Caitlyn enough to where she's back in the meta, he might just disappear. As will half of the other viable AD carries if Caitlyn is good again. I mean, I think Caitlyn is just the devil of bot lane. Like, she's really good. A good Caitlyn is awesome, but, like, her kit and just how she functions, if there's ever a meta where she's strong, she just starves out almost everybody else. She's kind of like the Janna of AD carries. It's like, if that champion's too strong, other champions just can't compete. So anyways, I think that Dinger is really good. He's rising in popularity, and I think that's going to continue to go that way. He's very strong. Okay, Swain is the last one in Tier 1 that I'll mention. Now, Swain is kind of iffy. Like, Swain has a pretty slow start, but he does scale up really well over time. He does still have to get Rod of the Ages, which makes him a lot slower than other champions in the bot lane. You know, when you're thinking that, like, someone like Jhin is just instantly powerful when they get that BF sword, and especially once they complete Stormrazor, they just instantly have a ton of power. Same thing with Draven. You know, Miss Fortune is just kind of strong right from the beginning, especially after she gets Dustblade. It's like just huge burst of power. He doesn't really have that. Like, when he gets his ult, he certainly gets a lot more powerful.
I did it.
Right? Is that right, Rory? But he's pretty strong because he's tough to kill. So he's actually pretty good if they have a lot of assassins, and he gets to, you know, his Rod of the Ages charged up, and he has his ult.
Can you clap? Can you clap?
Can you dab on those haters?
You gonna dab on the haters? You're making a mean face.
Are you getting huffy, Rory? Are you dabbing on haters? And he also brings some pretty good CC to the table, right? So he has his, I forgot what it's called. It used to be his never move, but his thing that pulls people back. It's pretty nice. So he can, like, stun them and then pull them back. And then he has his eye, you know, which can, I think that slows. I know it does decent damage.
Rory.
And then she's got her, and he's just, like, really hard to kill. He's got a lot of lifesteal. He's got a lot of health. He can get Hourglass. So he's just kind of an assassin's worst nightmare from the AD carry role. He doesn't do a lot of sustained damage to Baron or towers, so he's not amazing at objectives, but he's just kind of the champ you take. It's like, well, they got a lot of assassins. All right, they're not going to kill me. I'm taking Swain. Or if your team has a lot of sustained damage already, like if you already have a Yasuo or a Graves or something, he's pretty good. Or if you have a burst damage mage in the bot lane, he can be pretty good. So if you have like a Brand or a Xayah, you know, someone that roots him and then he pulls him back and blows him up, he can be very strong. So he has a slower start. He has to get Rod. He really doesn't have a ton of kill threat pre-6. Is that right, Rory? You got your old Teemo hat on? You got your Teemo hat on?
It's Teemo.
She's got her little Teemo hat. Homemade Teemo hat, too, not one you order online.
You can't order one online for a toddler. Mommy looked.
I guess, it's too big, the ones online. Is that right?
Right, they were only adult hats.
There were only adult Teemo hats. That's the next craze they need in League of Legends. They need, like, cosplay gear for kids. She says, what is this hat, guys? She really doesn't like hats very much. Do you, Rory? She says, no, I like to show off my beautiful scalp. I don't have much hair. Yeah, so he's a great sort of anti-assassin. You just want a really tanky mage bottom. Swain's your guy. Now, Vlad, people have been trying Vlad, but I think Swain is a lot better than Vlad. We'll talk about Vlad here in a second. I think Swain is the de facto. You want something a little different. Your team already has enough damage. You're just worried about assassins. You just kind of want to, you know, just be a sustained tank beast. Then I think Swain's your option. I think he's a pretty good option, too. We're even seeing him quite a bit in pro play if we see sort of picks of the week bot lane. This is in pro play. He was the #2 most picked champion in the bot lane. In pro play. Ezreal is #1, Swain is #2. Now remember, this isn't a pro play tier list, right? But I'm just saying that, like, it's working at the very highest levels, and I don't think he's that hard to play, honestly. And I think that he's a great solo queue warrior. He doesn't require a ton of extra coordination. So I think that he definitely can slot right in. I think a lot of people just aren't playing him in bot lane. He also has a really, a pretty high win rate. Let's see. Yeah, so I mean, he's sitting on like 52%, which is pretty high. And he only has a 5.4% pick rate, so people just aren't picking him. But he's good in solo queue, he's good in pro play. I think he's just pretty solid all around. So it's possible he could be up even a bit higher than this. I just have him at #5 just because he doesn't put out as much early game pressure. You just can't snowball off of fools in your lane, mispositioning quite as hard as you can when you're Jhin, Draven, Misfortune. And he's not quite as oppressive early as Dinger, but he's definitely a force. Okay, moving down to tier 2 here, and we'll try to speed this up so we can get this done in an hour. We have Ezreal. Let's see, right there, recording time. We have Ezreal. Ezreal, very good if you're good on Ezreal. People know he's my favorite AD carry to play. He's a lot of fun, but let's be honest, a lot of people are really bad on Ezreal. I'm not a grandmaster on him, but if you're playing Ezreal, you never can get hit with anything, and you have to hit at least, you know, like 70% of your Qs. But his itemization makes him great, even against assassins. He's super safe. He has a lot of range off of his Q. You know, if your support's a turkey and they never peel for you, no problem. You can peel for yourself with Ezreal and Iceborne Gauntlet. Right, Rory? Mm-hmm. Is that right, Rory? Are you looking? Is it bright in here?
No, there's only one light on. You haven't replaced the bulbs in your overhead light.
But, yeah, I mean, he's just got a lot of peel. He can do quite a bit of poke damage. He's got really good utility, awesome wave clear. Like, you can clear the wave from, you know, the other side of the map with your ult if y'all are trying to set up for a Baron and the side wave's just not looking good. And you need to clear it up so it doesn't push into your tower. You can ult across. You can deal really heavy burst damage. If someone initiates and CCs, you can just ult them. They're probably going to die. It'll deal like 50% of their health or more. He has a really powerful, like, late-game build if you go double tier. You know, he can have a decent sort of mid-game build if you skip the double tier and go for Blade the Run King instead. Right, Rory? So, yeah, I think he's really good. So, he's going to have a slower start than someone like a, you know, a Draven or a Misfortune. But he does farm very safely, easily. He takes teleport once he gets tier. You know, he's going to keep up. And yeah, he might miss a couple of CS if he doesn't really exert his will in the lane, but you have Kleptomancy to make up for that. You just get a couple of bags of gold. Each bag of gold makes up like 4 or 5 CS. So, all right, let's get her out of here. Let's get her out of here.
Are you ready?
She's ready. So, you know, it might look like, oh man, I'm Ezreal, I'm down 15 CS or whatever by like 15 minutes, but against Misfortune, but it's really not that big of a deal if you've had, you know, 3 bags of gold, you made up for it, pretty much. So, so yeah, he's very, I feel like if you're a good Ezreal, he's very consistent and he's just relevant throughout the whole game. So yeah, he's not the highest, like, pure burst damage AD carry in the market, but he can do quite a bit, especially later on, especially if your team needs some range and some poke. So I'm a big fan of Ezreal. I think he's very strong if you're good with him. And, you know, pro players are definitely big fans of him too because he's the most picked. But once again, it's solo queue, not pro play, but he has the potential to be extremely strong. But I have him at tier 2 because in reality, a lot of people still get hit by skill shots. They miss all of their Qs. You know, all of that stuff. They just don't play him right. Okay, I have Twitch up really high. A lot of other people are not going to have Twitch this high. I don't care. Like, the champion is so strong in solo queue. It doesn't matter if he goes 0-10 in lane. Just the fact that he can be invisible and just completely 100-0 people, you know, off of, like, 2 items. He just gets Blade of the Ruined King and Hurricane, and you just delete people. Because you're going to show up, you're going to get the first shot on him. You'll probably get, like, 2 shots on him before they realize what's happening. And unless they one-shot you, you're going to kill him off of that a lot of the time. And so he's really good at team fighting also, kind of like Misfortune, but he comes up invisible, and he can just delete an entire team with his ult. And even if they flash out of it or something, he doesn't have to channel it. He can just keep auto-attacking them. So I just think he's really, really good right now. Now, you're not going to see him in pro play, but in solo queue, where people don't respect invisible champions, where people just sit there and farm off with you. I mean, there are so often where I'll see a Jhin or a Misfortune, and they'll just sit there and farm. They won't even harass. I'll be playing like Lulu or something. I'll be right up in the AD carry's face. Every time they go for a CS, I'll be harassing them just over and over again, or like I'm Nami, and then I just look at the AD carry, and they're just sitting there farming. As a Jhin or a Misfortune, or a Draven even sometimes. Now, Dravens are usually really aggressive. I'll give them that. So that's why Draven's my favorite to lane with. But, you know, someone who just, like, got auto-filled and picked Misfortune because she has a high win rate, they're just going to sit there and farm. Especially at lower brackets, like gold and lower. So, but even, like, in platinum and probably even low diamond, Twitch is still a beast. Because if they just sit there and farm, you win. Like, because the only problem with Twitch is his early game sucks. Right? He doesn't have a ton of damage early on, and he can get bullied out by Misfortune, Draven. But that's if they actually harass you. If they just sit there and watch you, you're going to win. And you can take Doran's Blade and be fine with it. Now, I think that the best stuff with him is still going to be Press the Attack, Triumph Alacrity, Coup de Grace. And then I think you can go Sudden Impact Ultimate Hunter. Although, you know, you can still go Celerity, Gathering Storm if you want. You could also go Taste of Blood, which would give you some extra sustain in lane, which is not bad. So you could go like Taste of Blood, Ulti Hunter, or Taste of Blood, and then Ravenous Hunter, and then you could use like your Contaminate on a wave. Like you could just charge the wave up and then just contaminate the whole thing and just get a ton of health back off of Ravenous Hunter. If you want like double sustain. I mean, hell, you could almost have triple sustain if you're in a really tough lane. You could take Doran's Shield. You could have, instead of Alacrity, you could do Bloodline or whatever, which gives you the lifesteal. And then as a secondary, you could do Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. So you would have 3 different ways to gain life in lane, plus Doran's Shield, and then you're just going to get a free pass in most lanes if you want. And you're just going to take over the game. I mean, you don't lose as much by not going Gathering Storm on Twitch. Like, yes, Gathering Storm is good late game, but you already do so much damage, you're going to delete people. Like, it's overkill most of the time. And Twitch did get some pretty recent buffs. I mean, on this patch right here, I think he got 80 extra health at, like, level 1, which is massive. That's so huge. Not 80, 40. 40 extra health. But he got 40 extra health. They also buffed his Contaminate fairly recently to where it does even more damage. A lot of people are sleeping on Twitch. I'm telling you, this rat is nuts. So he was already really good. He's still really good. Especially at gold and lower. And I think that he can just, if you have a tough lane, just get a Doran's Shield, take the triple lifesteal build or whatever, and you'll make it. Especially if your support goes something like Nami or Sona, which are both very popular right now. If they can just help heal you through the laning phase, like, you will take over at some point later on in the game. So, I think that he is someone that a lot of people definitely disrespect who can be very strong. Okay, Lucian's still pretty good. He is represented at the pro level. He doesn't have a good win rate. As you can see, the red bar this week is not... that's not indicative of good stuff. But he's being played at a pretty high level quite a lot. You know, 1,500 games, 56% win rate. That's a lot of games. That's a lot of wins. So I still think that he's quite strong. The nerf to his ulti means you can't just ulti a wave and automatically clear it, which kind of sucks because that was one of the really strong things about him is he had very good lane control, you know. If the enemy carry backed when the lane was in a neutral position, then you could just push it in and force him to miss a few CS. Hey, thanks, Mason. Thanks for the sub. I appreciate it. So I think that can be a, you know, that's something that he loses. But he still is pretty good. I mean, Essence Reaver is not as good as it once was. But, like, going Blatherin King plus Black Cleaver is still pretty nice. Now, you're not going to have as much upfront burst with that build, I don't think, as someone like a Jhin or a Misfortune. But you do have a lot of mobility, so you can dodge a lot better than they can. You can reposition better than they can. So, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. And, like, the fact that it's Blade does help you out a lot against tanks. Like, if you have Blade plus Black Cleaver, you have pretty good shred. So, like, Misfortune and Jhin are both pretty awful against, like, a Mundo running at you. But Lucian can deal with that a lot better because he can do his Blatherin King thing to get the extra movement speed, do the extra max health damage. Then he can use his ulti as well while he's running away. So, Lucian's actually pretty good against tanks. Whereas a lot of these champions we've talked about so far aren't that great against tanks. The exception of Twitch is pretty good if the tank doesn't get on the Twitch. Right? If he gets to open up from long distance. But everybody else is pretty terrible. Like, Swain's not that great against tanks. Dinger's not that great. Draven is alright. So he's one of the better champions at dealing with tanks that we've mentioned so far, which are becoming more popular. So it's totally possible he should still be up in Tier 1. I just dinged him down a little bit because I haven't seen him as much, and I feel like his short range, he can definitely get bullied out by these three quite a bit. Pretty much these four are going to be able to bully him super hard in lane. And then Swain, not so much, but Swain just has more utility than he does, I think. But nevertheless, he is pretty strong, so I've got him here. All right, Xayah, and then with Lucian, of course, you know, what you want to go is press the attack. It's really easy to trigger this on him because your double shot counts as 2 different attacks, so you trigger that very well. And then just the Celerity, Gathering Storm, and then Ruined King, Black Cleaver, and Essence Reaver. I think you could also, if you think you're going to go to 4 items instead of Essence Reaver, you could go Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge. But I think that this is kind of where you want to be. Now, he can't use Stormrazor. Remember, like, it's just not going to be that great on him. And so that's kind of a pretty big loss that he doesn't benefit from the Stormrazor Rapid Fire combo that's kind of come about lately. But he still is pretty solid. Still pretty solid. All right, Xayah is another one. Very popular in pro play, primarily. She's really good with Rakan. Look at kind of the picks of the week here. Not a huge win rate. Okay win rate. And then she has a not amazing win rate in solo queue, only 49%. But I still think she's very good, especially if you have Rakan on your team. Rakan did just get nerfed too, so you're going to see a little bit less Rakan, but I still think he's really good. He's still #1 on my support tier list. You know, maybe he deserves to be somewhere slightly lower, but he's still Tier 1, any way you cut it. He's still a great support, and so you'll still see Rakan, still good with Xayah. The thing about Xayah is, like, she doesn't benefit as much from the standard Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge build, because she doesn't have anything special about her first hit. You know, she doesn't have, like, the Dark Harvest thing that, like, Misfortune has. She doesn't have the interaction with crit that Jhin has, or the, like, the upfront damage that Draven has, because she's designed to be someone who just, like, over time just, you know, slaps a bunch of feathers on the ground and then, like, pulls them back to her, and that's where she does her burst damage, so she takes time to prep and set up. And that's just really not in the meta right now. Like, that's not the best thing to be doing as AD carry. In solo queue, the best thing is to just do a ton of upfront burst. So it kind of puts her in an odd spot, but she still has such a good kit. Like, she has great wave clear. She has excellent sort of AoE damage in team fights. So she's kind of like Twitch, although she can't go invisible. And she's a little bit safer, like, with her ult, sort of. So, I mean, she's okay. She's still pretty good. So she's up there. She has quite a bit of utility. She takes a bit more skill than a lot of these other AD carries, because you have to set the feathers up properly and then get your geometry correct to be able to get your stuns, or your roots, rather, on people. But she still can be pretty strong. Now, I think a lot of people are going press the attack because she does damage with her abilities. This is why you don't go, like, lethal tempo and stuff on her. Like, champions that do damage with abilities, you want to do press the attack most of the time. That's why Twitch does it as well, because, like, his Contaminate does a lot of extra damage and benefits from press the attack. Similarly, whenever you trigger press the attack on someone with auto attacks, and all of your blades come back, you do the blade caller, that does a ton of extra damage. And having one press the attack, at least on your team, is really good because whoever you're hitting takes 12% extra damage from everyone on your team. So that gives you some extra insurance against tanks, right? You're trying to kill Mundo as Xayah, and Mundo's very popular and very strong still. You know, you're just throwing all these feathers on him, you trigger press the attack. Like, maybe you can't kill him yourself, but then the rest of your team, like, turns around to help you peel him. They're all doing 12% extra damage to him also, in addition to you. And that's another reason why press the attack is really, really good on an AD carry that can use it properly. So, it's just going to be your standard Stormrazor Rapid Fire Infinity. You know, you're not going to have as much upfront damage, but you're going to have more utility. That's the price you're paying with Xayah. And a really good interaction with Rakan. So, I think that she is still quite strong, but in solo queue, not as strong as some of the tier 1 champs. Okay, Xayah had a huge fall from grace. She's still pretty good, but like Ginsu's Rage Blade, that was a huge nerf. I mean, going from 25% extra AD and AP all the way down to like, was it 16% now, is a very, very big fall. So, I mean, that's just all there is to it. It's like, she already had a suspect laning phase. She's really short range. She doesn't have any sort of damaging abilities that matter in the laning phase. She's just an auto attack bot. And she doesn't use Stormrazor very well or Rapid Fire Cannon. And so now that's the new hotness. You know, Jhin, Misfortune, and Draven can just run her over in lane. Like, they just beast her. And so she is still probably the highest scaling AD carry, like maybe along with Twitch. In the game, but she just doesn't have like the same kind of team fight capabilities as Twitch, or like his ability to sneak up on people with his invisibility, and so that's why I have Twitch a little bit higher. But you know, I just feel like you're not immediately on single item power spike like doing massive damage. It requires a couple of items, right? You really need your Nashor's Tooth to go with the Ginsus before you really start taking off. What, man?
Chicken your ride on.
But she does do a lot of AP damage, which is really helpful in this meta to have an AP option. So if the rest of your team goes AD, you have a Graves jungle, you know, Yasuo top and Zed middle, then she's a pretty good AP option. I think you still want to do AP on her. I wouldn't do other stuff. You know, some people have asked me, would you go like Essence Reaver, plus like Hurricane or something like that? I don't think so. There was a time where you could go Hurricane on Xayah because it would stack her passive on everybody with the bolts, but they hotfixed that. Or they didn't hotfix it, but they changed it on a patch like several patches ago. Maybe 4 patches ago or so. She still has a pretty good win rate, you know, at a top level. She's just, in solo queue, she's fallen a lot. So, like, pros are still pretty good with her, but in solo queue, she's still at 48%, which is, you know, like 5% lower than it was, which is a huge nerf. But, yeah, I think a lot of people still, I like press the attack on her. And then Ginsu, once you get Ginsu Nashor, you still do a ton of damage. She's very, very good at taking tanks, by the way. This is probably the best tank breaker that we've seen. I think she's probably better than Lucian even later in the game taking tanks. Now, one thing, though, is if she's doing AP... Now, it's really only her passive that's doing a lot of the AP damage, though. Her on-hit, like, effects from Nashor's Tooth and her passive. But, like, someone like Mundo is going to be very good against that, because he's going to have Spirit Visage, he might have Adaptive Helm, and he's got his own sort of Mundo passive. I forgot which ability gives him all that extra MR. But that does hurt her against him specifically. But other tanks that don't, especially ones that don't stack a lot of MR, she's going to be able to tear through them. So like a Gragas or a Sejuani or, you know, something like that. She's going to light them up. So I think that she is still quite strong. It just takes a little bit longer to get going, and she has pretty bad matchups against the other stuff that's popular right now. Okay. Tristana is someone that I have up here, which is kind of a sleeper, I think. I think a lot of people haven't really rediscovered Tristana. This champion was a menace. If you do not remember last season with Tristana, especially after Caitlyn got nerfed really hard back in like August or something last year, and it was just like Tristana everywhere for like 5 months. This champion is absurd, and they just recently buffed her several times. Is it going to show us the history, or is that going to be... It doesn't want to show us the history lately. But at least it shows us the abilities. This website's been acting kind of weird for the last couple of weeks. But basically, if you look at her, like, her kit is disgusting. So they did lower her attack range to 525 to start with, I believe. But it eventually does go all the way up to 661, so it still goes to that super long range, which is further than Caitlyn's even. Now, the 525 is definitely a little bit of a problem early on, and she can get bullied early. But she does pretty decent damage. Like, if a gank comes in, she can throw down a lot of damage early on because of this rocket jump, which I think the rocket jump didn't get buffed, but the explosive damage did. Up to 4 times for a huge increase, plus 110% of your bonus AD. Okay, so if she fully stacks a bomb on somebody, you deal, you know, let's say that you get a jungle gank at level 3 or whatever. You fully stack this bomb, it's 132 damage, plus 110% of your bonus AD, which whatever that is, that's probably a minimum 150. And it resets your jump. Your rocket jump does 85 damage. 85 damage at one point. So you basically jump on them with rocket jump, stack all these charges up. That's going to do whatever that number is, you know, 150 minimum. Then you can jump on them again. So that's going to be 170 damage plus 150 damage. That's 320 damage off of this, in addition to just your auto attacks. So you just did like 50% of their health just by jumping on them, stacking these bombs up, it explodes, jump on them again, ton of damage. And it slows them, so it makes it kind of difficult to run away, because whenever you get a kill, or whenever the explosive charge detonates with max charges, you reset your jump. So she is very difficult to lock down. And she has buffering on her jump. If you guys don't know what that is, try to hit a good Tristana with a blitz hook, and you'll figure out really quickly what that is. It basically makes her immune to crowd control whenever she jumps. Like, it's the dumbest thing in the world. It's infuriating as someone who played against a lot of Tristana last fall. Like, if she preps that jump, if she, you know, starts the motion to jump, and then blitz hooks her, she gets out of it. Thresh hooks her, she gets out of it. Like, it basically makes her immune to crowd control for, like, that brief little, like, quarter of a second while she's prepping it. Now, if you grab her in mid-air, it will pull her back. But if she starts that animation, when the hook's coming at her, you're not going to get her with that hook. Or a lot of other CC out there. You know, she just becomes immune to it. Like, Ashe going to hit her with an arrow, she starts the jump. It'll still stun her when she gets to the end of the jump, but she's going to be 900 units away at that point. So, it's just a very, very frustrating mechanic with this. It does quite a bit of damage, even early on. You know, 320 damage at, like, you know, level 2. If you want to rocket jump them and explosive charge them and go all in at level 2 with, like, a Leona or something. Or, like, you know, a Xayah catches them with a root. A Xayah wouldn't have her root at level 2, typically, but, like, Alistar, you know, goes in for the pole combo, or Leona, or just whatever. Anybody that's super aggressive early on, Nami lands a bubble. Like, you do a lot of damage early on. So, yeah, she has lowered range, and she can get bullied out and poked out early on, but she has pretty respectable all-in. Her scaling late game, 110% attack speed, just by pressing the Q button. Late game, that's a lot. And she gets massive range. Oh, and by the way, her ultimate also does 300 damage as a point click. 300 damage. On an 80 carry with a point click ability. This is more damage than like a Xayah ult. Like, probably even a level 2 Xayah ult. Like, that's a lot of burst damage. And it's on a low cooldown for 120 seconds. And it's a defensive thing. So you can use it to execute people. Or you can use it defensively to save yourself from people. So that assassin tries to jump on you. Okay, Buster shot him. W away. You're gone. You know, you knock them back 600, you jump back 900, that's 1,500 distance, they're not going to catch you most of the time. So, she has so many defense mechanisms, because she has this jump, which also resets. So she can go ham, she can jump in and go for those kills, and then if she gets it, she can jump back out. So she's just very flexible like that, she's very safe. She does quite a bit of burst damage, even early on. This also, you can put this on towers, so she takes towers really quickly. She scales really hard off of draw a bead, and she can be pretty good with Stormrazor. So the reason for this is you get to run people down whenever you Stormrazor them. Well, first of all, you get a lot of free range because you have really long range. That helps you, you know, go in and just poke them with a Stormrazor when you have rapid fire and then run back out because you're going to have huge attack range, you know, in the mid to late game. But then also, if you jump in on somebody with Rocket Jump and then trigger that Stormrazor, you're going to be able to get this explosive charge off, because then even if they flash, you're probably still going to catch them and keep attacking them with this. I had this happen to me. I was like, how is she staying on me so much? And it was because of Stormrazor. It was because I was slowed by the jump in from Rocket Jump, which can last up to 3 seconds. And then also that Stormrazor just lets you stick to her. And it's just really hard to duel her. She throws this explosive charge on you. It's just very, very difficult because you know you're going to get blown up, especially later on in the game. I mean, it has 242% of your bonus attack damage later on. That's a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I think she's coming back. I mean, I still think that she can do Stormrazor, Rapid Fire, Infinity Edge and do perfectly fine. Like, she has a bit of a harder time early game against certain kinds of poke comps, but, you know, you can get around that if you really want to, right? You can just take, the, kind of similar to Twitch, you can do that Twitch build that I talked about where you take, press the attack, and then Triumph, you can go Bloodline, and then you can go Doran Shield start, and then you can just go Domination as your secondary tree and just do Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter. And, you know, the explosion off of these charges, whenever you kill a minion, it explodes and does magic damage to nearby minions. Every time that happens, it's going to heal you, because that's an ability doing damage, and it's going to heal you off a Ravenous Hunter. So you can just go for the quad sustain and lane if you don't have... And then if you have a Nami or a Sona, no problem. So I think a lot of people are sleeping on Tristana. I don't think she's getting played yet in the pro scene, but I think that she has a lot of potential. She is actually a small sample size at 58%. Some people are starting to figure her out a little bit more. Some people are trying out Blatherin King. I wouldn't do that. I would just straight up just do the standard Stormrazor Rapid Fire. I think it works great on her. So yeah, I think Tristana is something, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they just nudge up crit just a little bit in the next couple of patches. You could definitely see her up a lot higher than this. Okay, getting pretty long. We need to go a little bit faster here. Brand, I think, is still a pretty good mage in the bot lane. You know, you can just get a Ludens early, just push the wave. I don't think he's as good as, like, Dinger, but he has really good, like, team fight. So if you have a team fight comp, then he can do a lot of damage early on. If they have, like, a lot of melee champions, if they have 3 or 4 melee champions on their team and they're all going to be bunched up in fights, he can be very strong. Just be aware that, like, Yasuo just destroys him really hard because Yasuo's wind wall can eat the entire ult. Like, Braum is very good against him. There are a couple of champions that make it really difficult to deal with. But he's relatively easy to play. He does a ton of damage. He's great if you have something like a Leona, who's super popular right now, or an Alistar, just something that can engage and hold people still. That's going to let you get a free stun. They're basically dead, you know? Because that's the big limiting factor on Brand, is you have to hit them with one spell and then hit them with your Q. So it takes some prep. But if you get it, then you just do just a huge amount of burst damage. So I think that he's still a decent option. Jinx is becoming a lot more popular. I'm still not completely sold that she's tier 1, but I think that she can be okay with Stormrazor, just Stormrazor, Hurricane, Infinity Edge. She's very, very good. If she gets 3 items, she can just delete entire teams with her rockets. She has really long range. She's kind of like Tristana, where I think Jinx puts out even more damage, but is a heck of a lot less safe. But she has more range to start with early on in the game. So she has like a better early game than Trist, I think, as long as you don't get camped by the jungler. But she just has less utility, but still can be very strong. So if they have a lot of tanks on their team, we had one last night that got a double pentakill because they had no way to get to her, to get past me. I was playing Fiddlesticks. You know, Mundo or Maokai would try to flash and get her. I just fear them, and then they just die because she just does so much damage that it's really hard to deal with her. So she's probably one of the highest scaling AD carries, you know, right up there with Kaisa and Twitch late game. So I think that she's definitely on the rise. She has a really high not a really high, but a pretty high win rate in solo queue. I mean, 52%. Pretty solid. Of course, people aren't going to play her in pro play. She's just way too vulnerable. But in solo queue, if you have a support that you trust that can peel for you, she can be a good pick. Now, if you don't know who it is, you have an auto-filled support or something like that, do not play Jinx. You're just going to get dove and run over. If they have like 3 assassins on their team, do not play Jinx. But if you have a team with a good front line and a support that you trust, she can definitely be a pretty strong pick. Okay. Vlad, a lot of people just don't play this champion very well. I don't remember if he got nerfed or what. But he seems to have fallen out of the meta quite a bit. I just don't see Vlad's as much. I mean, I know they nerfed Shirelia's, which is a big deal on him. We're probably not going to be able to see the history again. That just never works anymore. But he's still pretty good. He has his own sustain built into the lane. So that's pretty nice. Like, it's very hard to harass him out of the lane. He takes quite a bit of skill to play correctly. I see so many bad Vlads. I don't understand how it's hard to be bad on Vlad, but you can do it. Like, you just have to, like, charge up your stuff and get the right sequences and just look at, you know, just use your Q correctly. So, I don't know. I can't quite explain why people just aren't that great on him, but he's okay in the bot lane. I think Swain is way better. Swain just comes online faster. Like, Swain does have to get Rod of the Ages, which seems like he'd be slow, but Swain at least has, like, CC, right? He's got a decent chunk of CC, and it works really well with supports because if someone else CCs somebody, you can still pull them towards you. It doesn't have to be you hitting the never move all the time. And so that's part of what makes him good in a 2-person lane, is if you have a support that CCs, that helps out a lot with your passive. So, yeah, I mean, he's all right. If you're a good Vlad player, you can definitely make him work. But even in, like, the pro level, Vlad is just not working out very well. As you can see, he lost more games than he won. Now, this is over the whole season, I think. This isn't just this last week. I'm pretty sure. But, yeah, I mean, he only has a 47% win rate in pro play, and then in solo queue, in mid lane, he has a 47%. So it's very similar. So, I mean, he's all right. He takes some expertise to play correctly, and he takes a couple of items. They nerfed, like, his favorite toy, which was Shirelia's, a few patches ago. So he's all right. I just feel like there are better options for most people in the bot lane, but you can still see him. He still can be successful. Then finally, Sivir just got a buff this patch. Her Q has a lower cooldown. Unfortunately, what limits Sivir the most is her mana cost. They're still too high early on. But she has a very clear niche. She's super good at wave clear later on and helping your team initiate fights. So if you have a whole bunch of bruisers on your team, you have like a Darius on your team and, I don't know, like a Gragas or, you know, something like that. You just have a couple of champions that can get kited, but they're really strong if they just get on somebody, then her ult can be a godsend just to help get people up there to fight. She's very good with Essence Reaver too, so that fixes her mana problems once she gets that. So, you know, she can be pretty strong. The Stormrazor is actually very, very good with her passive, because with her W, because remember, if one of those things crits, then every single bounce is going to crit. So that can be pretty nice with Stormrazor for wave clear and for team fights. So I think that she can be pretty good. I think that she's still not as great as these other choices, but I think in some circumstances she can be a good pick. A very clear identity that's different from others, which is like super wave clear and really good mobility for your team. So I think she still can be strong. Honorable mentions, just super fast here. Yasuo can be okay. If you're a great Yasuo player, it can work bot lane. I just feel like there's so many fail Yasuos out there. Like, if you have him with somebody who has a knock-up, like a Rakan or an Alistar, he can be good, but those champions aren't super popular. I mean, Rakan's pretty popular. Alistar is okay. But yeah, I mean, you can get harassed and bullied out. Like, if you're trying to Yasuo against, like, a Jhin or a Misfortune, you're going to get shanked in the bot lane probably a lot of the time, depending on what their support is. But if it's like a Jhin Nami bot lane and you're trying to play Yasuo, you're never touching that wave probably. So there are some very, very bad matchups for Yasuo bot lane. So he can be good, but he can also be really bad if you walk into the wrong matchup. Double ranged with really strong early harass is going to light you up. So I really don't like Melee's bot that much. Like, the mages are okay because they're ranged and they have special stuff about them. You know, at least the Dinger and Swain, and then to a lesser extent Vlad. But I do not like the Melee's bot lane. So Yasuo is kind of in the doghouse for me. I've seen it work a couple of times, but it fails way more than it works, I feel like. Although statistically, you know, he's going to have a 52% win rate, whatever. This, I mean, he's mostly played by one-tricks and specialists if he's getting played in the bot lane. So I think that data is pretty skewed. But anyway, if you're really good on him, you can make it work, but I would not go out and practice it right now if you're not already good on it. Varus is somebody who's seeing some more pro play. He has a really low win rate in solo queue. Yeah, he's at like 47%. He's all right. He's just like, he doesn't, like, he needs to go. I think a lot of people are going like Blather and King on him now. Like Blather and King Hurricane type of build. And I just don't think he's performing that well. Did I close my pro builds? Let me see. Yeah, I mean, he's like 45% with not a super lot of pick rate. You know, you can still go like Gensu's, but Gensu's just got nerfed really hard like Xayah, and he just doesn't scale as hard as Xayah does with the damage. Now, he does have the utility of his ult, and he has a pretty good laning phase as far as like, he has nice range at 575. He has like okay harass with his, I think it's his E that throws a little circle on the ground. He's okay, but I feel like Xayah kind of does what he wants to do better as far as like the Gensu's AP type of thing. She has less utility, but just way higher scaling. So, I don't know. He's okay. You can make him work. I just feel like he definitely has some problems in this meta right now as well. Now, Rengar is somebody else who I did have bot lane. I still think if you're like a really good Rengar, you can make it work, especially if you have an aggressive bot laner, but now that sort of these like super early game like bully champs like Jhin, Misfortune, and Draven are popular, I think they can blow you up. Very similar to Yasuo. I just don't think they're going to let you touch the wave if it's like double ranged against Rengar. So, you know, like, can you make it work? Sure. But, you know, when I had Rengar up there a bit more, it was when Xayah was kind of popular. It was when Lucian was kind of popular. And, you know, Lucian can bully out early on to an extent, and Xayah can't really, let's be honest. You know, she does scale well, but she's always been bad early game. So that was, you know, that was when I think Rengar was kind of at his strongest bot lane, is he can take advantage of this. And he could really take advantage of people not knowing what's going on in the meta, just playing weird crap, and he could just kill them early and just snowball because they don't know what they're doing. But now that people are sort of figuring out the meta a bit more, there are these heavy bully AD carries, double range bot lane, it makes it a lot harder. So, can he work? Sure. Would I recommend it right now? Probably not. Not if you're a Rengar one trick. Irelia got nerfed really hard, similar to Yasuo and Rengar. It's a melee champion bot lane against double range bot lane, Nami or Sona, plus insert bully champion early. It's just going to be too difficult to deal with as Irelia, I think. You're just not going to be able to touch the wave. Same thing with Mordekaiser. Can he be cool? Yes. Is he going to get completely run out of lane? Yes. Early on. He has a very cool kit. I like Mordekaiser. It's just like he doesn't have any CC. He doesn't, I mean, he does scale pretty well. Like, his dragons are cool. His ghosts are very powerful and cool. He just needs a little bit of help with his stats, I think. Just something to give him some more move speed. I don't know what that would be. I mean, I guess his, like, W does give him some when he runs towards his partner, but I don't know. He just needs a little help. So, I don't think he's that great. Vayne is someone else. Like, she's good once she gets to, like, you know, 2 or 3 items, but she's terrible early game, and she's just going to get murdered by these other champs. So, yeah, we had a really good Vayne last night on stream. You know, once she gets to Blather and King plus Gensu's Rage Blade, that's a lot of damage. Gensu's did just get nerfed, though. So it's okay, but she's going to get slaughtered by Draven, Jhin, or Misfortune early on. So yeah, I mean, if you want to wait to 3 items, I just feel like if you want to play somebody who kind of sucks in the lane that scales well into late game, just play Twitch or Xayah. Like, those are just way better than Vayne, I think. I think Twitch is the best of those types of champions, but then I think Xayah is very close second. Kai'Sa's the best, like, we're just going to sit here and auto-attack and just do a crap load of damage, I think, off of, like, 3 items. But then Twitch has that surprise element to him, which, in my mind, elevates him a bit over the others. But if you want that style of just farm up, I think there are better options. Ziggs is another one, like, decent Harat. He's just very vulnerable to assassins. He has some okay damage early on. He can do extra damage to towers. He's very skill shot reliant. You got to hit those Qs a lot. I have seen some good Ziggs players, but the cooldown's just too long on his satchel charge. If it was a bit lower, if he had more safety, it'd be nice, but I just don't think that's going to happen. He's okay. Cog, similar to the others, if you want somebody who sucks early, that's going to scale, just pick another champion. Cog is interesting because he still does scale really well. Hyper scale, but Gensu's also did get nerfed really hard. So, typically he'll go like Gensu's Blade. Similar to Varus, it's like, it's okay, but like if you want to do that type of thing, just play Xayah. Now, he does have a stronger laning phase than a lot of those other champs. He can turn on his W and crank some people in lane. If you have a Lulu as support, you can play Kog'Maw, I think. Lulu and Cog are extremely good together. But unless you have Lulu, I just really wouldn't even consider Cog. Quinn has a high percentage bot lane. She just doesn't do enough. Like, she does some burst damage early on, which is nice. I mean, she does have the highest win rate at a 2% pick rate. I mean, maybe I'm disrespecting Quinn too much. I know that, like, Tower 1 really likes Quinn when his Draven's banned. I just don't think she has the range or the power. Doesn't she have, like, 500 range? Maybe 525? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I just never see this champ. Whenever I do, it just fails horribly, bot lane. When it's on my team or on the enemy team, she just gets trashed a lot of the time. So she's kind of low range. I mean, like, her Blinding Assault is pretty good. I mean, it gives somebody near sight for 1.5 seconds, so it's pretty good for dueling. I mean, she's good at dueling. She's good at roaming. I just feel like she can get harassed out of lane early on, especially because of her range, by a Draven, a Jhin, or a Misfortune. I don't know. Like, this has been pretty good. I had a Quinn one game where I was trying to engage as Rakan several times, and she kept stuffing me with this vault. Which was really good. I mean, that was a pretty good Quinn player. So, I mean, I guess in some matchups, I'm curious now if she could vault like a Zac that's trying to engage or a Lee Sin that's trying to engage. If she could vault and knock them out of the air. That could actually be cool. I mean, maybe I just haven't seen the good Quins. Maybe I just haven't seen it. So, I mean, she could work. Maybe I'm just, like I said, maybe I'm just not respecting her correctly. But she just doesn't have any attack. I guess she does have an attack speed steroid here, but it's on a pretty long cooldown. That's if you attack a vulnerable target for 2 seconds. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe she deserves to be, like, tier 2. I probably wouldn't put her tier 1, but I just feel like a lot of people that play her just aren't going to be good enough on her to make her work. But in an ideal circumstance, maybe she deserves to be up there somewhere. I don't know. I'd have to study it more. Ashe, pretty bad. Doesn't have good runes. Doesn't have good items. She does have a good initiate, but that's about it. Caitlyn's still in the dumpster. Like, it seems like Stormrazor would be really good on her with rapid fire, and it kind of is, but it's just not enough. Not enough synergy, especially with runes. Like, since they nerfed Fleet Footwork, she just doesn't have another good rune. She can't really use Press the Attack that well. She can't use, Dark Harvest or any of these other, like, runes that are helpful, as well as some of these other champs. So, she's okay. She's still, you can still win with her. She just has a terrible win rate, right? I mean, it's, like, really bad, I think, right? Well, it's not that bad. It's like 48%. I mean, she's okay. If they buff crit in the next patch, she might come back a little bit. We'll see. Then Kallista's still in the dumpster. It's just too hard to play as champ. It requires a lot of coordination on your team. Just pretty slow out the gate. Can you win with her? Sure, but will you win with her? Probably not, unless you're like a Kallista one-trick. Okay, but that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Way longer than I intended, but there's a lot of stuff that changed. I mean, this is the most dynamic role in the game right now. There's so much from patch to patch. I mean, my tier list got shuffled around a lot. and I think it has evolved a lot because of the the new runes and items that people are building, especially on some of these top champs. So I just wanted to take a lot of time to explain that here. So sorry if it's a bit longer than people would like, but I'll try to get it down next time. Once the meta like stabilizes a little bit over the next couple of patches, I don't have to shift the champions around as much. We might be able to get it under an hour. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.